I'm here with Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. Peter, Tucker Carlson in his opening last night, his opening segment covered Venezuela. He had on the show, Representative Diaz-Balart from the U.S. Congress, a Republican from Florida, comment on what was going on in Venezuela. He also played clips from an interview with Senator Rick Fox. I believe he's also a Republican from Florida. I'm going to play you those clips right now, and you can comment afterwards. There was a lot of stuff said. Rick Fox said there's genocide going on, Syria in our hemisphere. Diaz-Balart said there's Hezbollah there, 25,000 Cubans, Russians, nukes, all kinds of stuff. Let me play the video for our viewers, and then you can comment right afterwards. So here we go. Let's roll it.
Watch Florida Senator Rick Scott explain.
Do you think that our presence there would make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. I was down the Venezuelan border last Wednesday. This is just pure genocide. Maduro is killing his own citizen.
Is it worth, though, however strongly you feel, sir, losing American men and women to do just that?
Neil, here's what's going to happen. We are in the process, if we don't win today, we were going to have Syria in this hemisphere. So we can either make sure something happens now, or we can deal with this for decades to come. If we care about families, if we care about the human race, if we care about our fellow worldwide citizens, then we've got to step up and stop this genocide.
All right. Just want to make sure that's clear. If you care about families and you care about the human race, if you want to stop genocide, you will send your children to Venezuela to fight right now without even thinking about it, without even weighing the consequences. You'll just do it, assuming you're a good person. Of course, if you don't care about families or the human race, if for some reason you despise human happiness and support genocide, then you'll want to join Satan's team and embrace isolationism, the single most immoral of all worldviews. That's what they're telling you. That's what they're demanding you believe. Message received. We've heard it before. But before the bombers take off, let's just answer a few quick questions, starting with the most obvious. When was the last time we successfully meddled in the political life of another country? Has it ever worked? How are those democracies we set up in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, and Afghanistan tonight? How would Venezuela be different? Please explain, and take your time. Next, are we prepared for the refugees a Venezuelan war would inevitably produce? A study by the Brookings Institution found that a collapse of the Venezuelan government could force 8 million people to leave that country. Many of them would come here. Lawmakers in this country proposed giving them temporary protected status. That would let even illegal arrivals live and work here, in effect, permanently, as many have before, with no fear of deportation. Are we prepared for that? Are we prepared to absorb millions of new Venezuelan migrants? All of them great people, no question, but many with little education or skills or English? Finally, how exactly is any of this good for the United States? Our sanctions on Venezuela have already spiked our gas prices. That hurts our struggling middle class more than virtually anything we could do. So what's the point of doing that? So our lawmakers can feel like good people? And if they are indeed good people, why do they seem to care more about Venezuela than they care about this country, the one that they run? They're happy to send their military to South America at the first sign of chaos, but U.S. troops to our own border to stem the tide of 100,000 uninvited arrivals a month? No way, they tell us. That's crazy talk. So what's the thinking here? To find out, we're joined tonight by Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart of Florida. Congressman, thanks very much for coming on. So I can see a lot of ways this would be helpful to factions within Venezuela, maybe to the country as a whole. How would intervening in Venezuela help your constituents, American citizens?
Tucker, when you talk about foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy, the number one principle has to be the national security interest of the United States. So absolutely. And that's above anything and everything else.
Right.
So the question is, does the situation in Venezuela present a national security threat to the United States? So what do we know? We know that there are 20 to 25,000 Cubans in Venezuela. We know that there are Russian troops in Venezuela. We know that we have Hezbollah, Iranian presence in Venezuela. We know that we have Chinese presence in Venezuela. So is that a potential risk for the national security interests of the United States? Absolutely. The question is, if that's the case, and some may disagree that having all those folks there is a problem. I don't. I think it's a national security threat for the United States. If that's the case, what steps should the United States do to protect our national security interests?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, no one is surprised that the world's bad guys are congregated in a country like Venezuela. We've seen similar things happen many times in history. The question is, does intervening help the situation, and does it help the United States? That's the really simple question.
And that's a very good question. And I would tell you that military intervention always has to be the last thing.
Well,
that
Rick
we should
Scott, your senator is saying it should be the first thing.
No, I think
care about humanity and want to stop genocide, we need to intervene.
No, I think.
So why is that not crazy?
Well, because I think what Rick Scott is aware of is that, in my opinion, in his opinion, that there is a huge national security threat to the United States. And then the question is,
what exactly is the threat? I mean, please be specific.
To be specific, when you have a country that we now have Middle Easterns with real legal Venezuelan passports that we have found, you have Hezbollah, you have Cuba, you have Iran, you have Russia, you have China there. So imagine if this regime that now is receiving a lot of international pressure, right, survives. Is it or is it not potentially a green light, an open door for the Russians, for the Chinese, for others to increase their activity against our national security interests right here in our hemisphere?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's kind of hard to see what you're talking about exactly. Are you suggesting they're going to invade?
No, they don't have. Look, the United States, the closest we ever came to nuclear war was because the Russians put missiles, right, nuclear missiles, in Cuba.
So you suggesting the Russians are going to put nuclear missiils in Venezuela?
What I'm suggesting is that they're already there. What I'm suggesting, I'm not suggesting.
Why should I care if they're there? I mean, no offense, but
right. Well, and I think it's a very valid question. Why should we care what the Chinese, what the Russians do anywhere around the world? But I think, particularly, we should care what they're doing in this hemisphere, in our own hemisphere.
Okay. But the Chinese, as you know, have built infrastructure in virtually every country in this hemisphere.
That's a different animal.
I don't think it is. We haven't done anything about it. And so they have a small number of Russian advisors there, and I'm supposed to think it's a threat. Because why? No one really explains. Why should I not be worried about 8 million people leaving Venezuela and some of them coming here? Why would we give any of them temporary protected status?
Well, no, we clearly should. But remember, the reason that they are fleeing in Venezuela, from Venezuela. By the way, what 20 years ago was one of the wealthiest countries in the planet, right, is because of this tyrannical regime, anti-American regime, with close ties to the worst thugs and anti-American.
Look, I'm not defending Maduro at all. I'm just wondering, so our interest is not to have gas prices spike?
No. Let me try to get to your point, because I think you make a very valid point. The reason Venezuelans are leaving is precisely because of that regime. It is the largest refugee crisis this hemisphere has ever seen. And by the way, we spent a lot of time, obviously, focusing on the Middle East. There are more refugees that have left Venezuela than left Syria.
I get it. That's why I'm worried about making it worse. So
you do not make it worse. You do not make it worse by helping the Venezuelan people get rid of the regime that's causing that to happen.
You make it worse by saying in public, as you have said, that if you make it here illegally, we'll let you stay, and that we'll give you amnesty, which you have said.
No.
That you have suggested temporary protected status for Venezuelans who are here illegally.
Here's
why is that not an inducement?
And I think it's a very good question. Look, the reason the Venezuelans are in Colombia, in Brazil, again, over 3 million have already left Venezuela, and the forecasts are that if the Maduro regime persists, and that's to the point that you were making, you're going to have another 5 million leaving. So that is caused by that regime. So it's in our interest, if all we care about is stopping that from happening, we have to do what we can to make sure that that regime is no longer there.
Or that the regime remains there, but that there isn't a scene like this, that there aren't fires and conflict. I mean, that's kind of the message from Syria. But let me just ask you really quickly, everyone in Washington, bipartisan, not just you, lots of Democrats too, for these sanctions on Venezuela because the government is bad. I think the government's bad. I agree. Fine. But those sanctions have increased the price of gasoline for middle-class Americans. So, because why exactly? How do they benefit from that? I'm confused by that.
Tucker, the Venezuelan oil company, the proceeds of that money, of those funds, go directly to the regime. The regime uses it for not only repressing their people, but for again anti-American activities. Now,
well, what's more anti-American than rising gas prices?
Well,
doesn't that actually hurt Americans more than anything the Venezuelans have ever done?
If you look at the production of Venezuelan oil, it has been dropping dramatically because it's a socialist disaster country. But even though the revenue is going down, 100% of that revenue, I shouldn't say 100%, but pretty much 100% of the revenue is used by the Venezuelan regime to do nefarious things.
Okay.
What But let me tell you,
we're almost out of time.
I commend the Trump administration because they've done a very responsible job trying to pressure the regime, help the Venezuelan people to avoid a catastrophe that would, that one day might force the United States to have to intervene.
Okay. Well, I hope that day is far away. Congressman, thanks very much for explaining all that. I appreciate it.
Great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
All right, Peter. So that was Tucker's Open. What do you make of those interviews?
Well, first of all, Tucker is the only one to go out and be against regime change here. I was looking at the FAIR website on accuracy in media as of the April 30th. So that doesn't count what Tucker had to say yesterday. As of April 30th, there was zero in the mainstream media pushing back against regime change in Venezuela. And that means cable plus PBS, New York Times, Washington Post, etc. Okay, legacy media, and Tucker pushed back in the most obvious ways. I mean, it was just laughable. Genocide, come on. I mean, Max Blumenthal went down there a few weeks ago, I guess what month or 6 weeks ago, and right after seeing there's no toothpaste in the markets, there's Max walking around. Hey, there's lots of toothpaste, there's lots of shampoo, there's a lot of choice actually for a socialist country. All right. This is really unconscionable what is going on right now. You have this mono-party, these elites that are just in lockstep for regime change again. And Tucker asked the best question. And I have to say, I've been saying it for probably a lot longer than Tucker, is that when does this stuff ever work? Forced regime change. And of course, his guest just went back to genocide and Hezbollah and our hemisphere. Then
Russia.
Russia. Then what? Then you can obviously turn around and say, well, what about the United States and Ukraine? Isn't that really close to Russia? And we're stirring up trouble there. And then they invoking like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now we're going to get missiles in Venezuela. No, I would agree there is mismanagement of the economy because of the drop in oil prices and the sanctions that the United States is forcing everyone to sign up to. That's what's hurting the economy here. The best thing to do was end the sanctions. Spain, for a number of years, was involved in mediation between the opposition and, at that time, the Chavez government. Bring them in and have negotiations. I mean, we don't have to go to war here. We just don't have to. I mean, what I find really remarkable is that Trump is in the process of breaking a campaign promise. And he has to be aware of it because he is aware of his promises here. Again, one has to ask the question, is this just a mass marketing of possible intervention to create an atmosphere of bluffing? Pompeo said he's getting ready to leave, the Russians, because they have a good in there, obviously. And they're saying, no, that's not true at all. That's fake news. And so, you have the media just parroting what Mike Pompeo has to say is that, we're almost there. Well, no, you're not almost there. And this is International Labor Day, okay? And Maduro's people are out in force. Okay, the opposition doesn't have the strength, and the military are saying, we're not going to follow you people whatsoever. It is really quite remarkable, with considering all of the uprising and the violence, that I don't think anyone has been killed. I mean, people have been hurt, and most of the people that have been hurt are the military acting as riot police and other security functions. So the way the media reacts to it is so exaggerated. It is so biased. They can barely find Venezuela on the map. All right, they don't know what they're talking about. Simply, they're relying upon the State Department and Pompeo's people and John Bolton. I mean, John Bolton, I thought was going to have a stroke on Twitter because it's not going his way. He's like a 5-year-old child stomping his foot on the ground, wanting a new iPad. Okay. I mean, just absolutely embarrassing himself. There are a lot of problems in Venezuela. A military intervention would make it far, far worse. Far worse. Because there are people in Venezuela that will fight for what they have because they didn't have it 10 years ago. Now, we can go down, debate all you want about socialism. That's not our business. It's the business of the people of Venezuela. Okay, that's their business. And the United States has no right, and it's actually illegal under international law, to be saying and doing what it might do. It's only going to make things worse. In those interviews that we had with Tucker, do we want to have another Syria in the Western Hemisphere? Well, if they go down this path, that's exactly what they're going to get. It will unleash a massive migration north. And just like they did with the El Salvadorians, after the earthquake, you have special status in the United States. So you're going to give special status to millions and millions of Venezuelans. And one of his guests said yes. So and there's no wall. They don't think this through. The law of unintended consequences is always in play, and they're not thinking these things through. There are ways to resolve the problems. I don't even like using the word crisis. There are ways to resolve the problems of Venezuela, and the last thing is a military intervention. What I find so terribly pathetic is that the media, lockstep, wants another foreign military intervention because look at those beautiful missiles type nonsense. One of the most despicable phrases ever said on television was at NBC. Despicable. These things are very serious, and the consequences will, if there is some kind of military intervention, there'll be consequences that will be felt for years and years and years to come. Okay, why should any American boy or girl in uniform die in Venezuela? Why? Give me one good reason why. Hezbollah is there. You don't know that. That is a claim. Are there people from Lebanon in Venezuela? I would imagine so. Are they Hezbollah? Prove it to me. Prove it to me. Just because someone says it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. The Russians are there. Yeah, the Russians are invited there. It's a sovereign country. They're there to help with more technical issues than anything else, and particularly with the power grid that someone outside, most likely we know, probably who, threw a wrench into their electricity grid. They're there to fix it. Venezuela has bought Russian military material. The Russians are there to do technical checkups. There's nothing wrong with that. The United States does that in how many countries around the world? Every single day. Okay, giving the Russians notice to get out. Why? They're there legally. The government has invited them there. Of long standing, Russia has investments there, legally and of long standing. I mean, why can't Venezuela act like a sovereign state? Because the United States doesn't recognize it. Okay, and the America's long, dreadful history with south of the border is being repeated again. This arrogance, it's very messianic. Okay, it is so demeaning. There is such a thing called self-determination. Let the Venezuelans determine their self-determination. Okay, the United States has no business in doing that whatsoever. So the way the media is rolling it out as a massive marketing campaign is despicable. It is a betrayal of journalism, and it shows how much the media succumb to being just stenographers for power.
Go over, Peter, the fake news about the fact that Maduro was set to leave. The plane was on the tarmac, and then Russia talked him out of it. Zakharova has already denounced that, and the Russian government has denounced that. Go over quickly what happened there, because that was an incredible claim.
Well,
I think Pompeo made that claim.
Yeah. I mean, you've just said it all there. Okay, and what it is that it's trying to create an atmosphere of desperation in Venezuela. But what it does is it's showing the desperation of Pompeo and Bolton. They're the ones that are desperate right now. I mean, I think it's just absolutely hilarious that a random guy, Guaido, is walking around where he has the security forces protecting him. They don't want anything to happen to him, okay? And then he's talking in front of a group of soldiers saying, I want you to come over to my side, and they're just standing there like, no, we're not going to do that, okay? And Guaido's people say, there's a number of generals and colonels, it just takes one or two of them, and the whole thing's going to fall out. No, that's not going to happen. There's no evidence of it, okay? And if it was going to happen, it probably would have happened already. All right? I mean, what we have to wait for next at some point in time, Guaido's going to have to be arrested. I mean, you can't. This is sedition. Okay, this is traitorous behavior under Venezuelan law. And I don't know how much longer they're going to allow him to walk around. I mean, they might put him under house arrest to say, hey, Juan, go in this house, and just stay there, okay? Because, you're breaking the law left and right. And we don't want to cause a cataclysm in this country. So his moment is in the past. This had to happen in 48, 72 hours, more like 24 hours,
24,
okay?
Yeah.
It had to be quick, shock and awe. Well, there was no shock and there's no awe. There's a lot of stupidity. Okay, Elliot Abrams, you blew it again.
Yeah, they've given Guaido quite a loose leash, and I think the government's now saying, your antics, they may have been, cute a couple of months ago, but now they're just getting dangerous. I mean, the guy's a joker. I think everyone has now come to the realization that he's a joker. Well, even the Abrams.
The farce of yesterday. Maduro's escaping. Today is International Labor Day. It's May Day. And this is an opportunity, as we speak now, in Caracas, people are showing their distaste for foreigners using puppets in their own country. And it's all over the place. They all know it. And even people in the opposition, I've even had on CrossTalk, they are wary of a military intervention, too, because they know the cost of it. And the law of unintended consequences comes into play. Look, from what I've been told, the Venezuelan military is well supplied, high morale. Their highest military leaders have a lot of perks to give them a reason to be loyal to the government. They have a lot of businesses, some of them pretty shady. I'm not going to vouch for their commercial, let's say, interests, but they don't really have any interest to go over to Guaido, because Guaido will make sure that if they do, he gets into power, he's going to get rid of all of them because he doesn't want to be overthrown by the military. I mean, come on, guys, think this through. Think this through. All right, so this whole farce that Bolton and Pompeo have cooked up is a complete failure. It doesn't mean instability is dissipating. It's not. There's still a lot of uncertainty. But the events of yesterday just show that this thing is just not going to get off the ground. And at some point in time, they're going to have it's not that the Venezuelan government will do anything particularly harshly negative to Guaido. It's going to be Washington that says you haven't served your purpose, and they're going to find somebody else, a false flag, something like this here. Okay, we always have to be aware. I mean, what Pompeo said it a few days ago in a public talk. He said, he was reflecting upon his days at the CIA. We lied, cheat, and steal. Okay, that's exactly what they're doing now to Venezuela. All right, they're doing it openly, and the media parrots every single word of it. It is just shameful.
Yeah, and on Fox Business News, Pompeo, let me read you a quote. Pompeo actually did allude to military intervention. He said, let me find the quote here. Yes, U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo says military action in Venezuela is possible if that's what's required.
I think this is, again, bluffing. This is bluffing. All right, because the government and the pillars of power that support the government have everything to lose.
Yeah,
everything. And what would there going to be some kind of lustration if Guaido gets in power? He wants his own people in power so they can suck the lifeblood of the nation. Okay, like all governments did before Chavez. I'm not supporting socialism here. I'm for enfranchisement of people, and Chavez did that. And there's no denying of that. There's no denying that living standards went up. There's no denying that poverty declined. There's no denying that people became better educated. You can't fight facts, okay? And what we're doing right now is we're using sloganeering to destroy the sovereignty of a very, very rich country. It's for the Venezuelans to figure out on their own. And given the history of American meddling south of the border, you can take it to the bank that the U.S. is going to screw it up again if they have any kind of military operation. And Donald Trump will rue the day that he allowed something like this happen, because it's going to be his name all over it.
Yep.
All over it. Okay, so Trump, Mr. President, people around you are not your friends and not protecting your political interests. They are not.
Well said. Stay out of it.
Pompeo doesn't care about Trump.
Stay out of it.
Bolton doesn't care. They care about their arms dealers, friends, and the Koch brothers and all those people, okay? And it just, again, I keep stressing it. It's just so shameful, the people in the media. Go to Gray Zone, come here. RT's doing a fantastic job on it. Now, I looked at this morning, all their headlines about what's going on in Venezuela. So
RT is doing a great job, yeah.
We got to keep our eyes open.
And, of course, come to the Duran. We try to cover as much of this as we can. Well said.
And kudos to Tucker for standing up.
Kudos to Tucker. I was just about to say, yep. Peter Lavelle, I think you echoed the words of Tucker. He might have echoed your words because you have been saying this for a long time. Either way, I think both of you guys are on the same exact page here. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Visit the Duran shop, buy a t-shirt, help support the Duran, and you can donate to us via PayPal and Patreon. The links are in the description box down below, and you can get a copy of this video in audio format. Follow us on iTunes and SoundCloud as well. And you can also follow us on Instagram, the Duran_com. You can also get notifications via the Blank Chat app. Download on Google Play and iTunes. And you can always go to theduran.com, our new website, and see the articles that we're posting every day. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. Thank you. Until next time, take care.